Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of Executive Speakers on Speakers Zoomcast. My name is Stephen Kirkpatrick. I'm your host, and I'm so excited to welcome you today because we've got a treat in store for you. Not only is my fabulous and talented co-host Jennifer Lear back with us, but we've also got speaker Jim Davidson, who did a live event to an audience the past couple of weeks. I know it's crazy, but we're going to talk and find all about it. Jennifer, how are you?
I'm amazing, and I'm actually more excited to hear about this live event that I've heard of. I didn't know such things were happening. This is fantastic.
It's like crazy. It's like, where did this come from? I don't even know. But it happened about a week and a half ago. Jim, who is our guest, we'll introduce in a second, went down to Arizona and did a live event. So it's crazy. But here's the cool thing, Jennifer. I think it's going to be a good blueprint for speakers and meeting planners of some things to think about, but also too kind of a blueprint for starting back and getting back out on the road once things become safe and more states open up.
I love that, Stephen, and thank you so much for having me, because the fact that I'm here in Las Vegas. Oops, I don't know what's functions right here.
That's okay.
But the fact that I'm
I
here
can feel for you.
I know. The fact that I have no idea what's happening. The fact that I'm here in Las Vegas and I'm seeing what's happening here on the ground level, this is why I'm so excited to have this conversation with Jim today. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me on once again with your podcast. And let's go. I want to find out
Let's get into it. Everyone, I am so excited to introduce our guest for today, Jim Davidson. Jim is a keynote speaker, resilience expert, best-selling author, and climber. Jim has had 2 different TV shows made about different experiences in his life, one featured on Nat Geo and one featured on Discovery Channel. Jim has an amazing story. He's also an amazing speaker, so we're very glad to have him. Jim Davidson, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I am excited to be with you guys, and I love the energy already, so this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
So Jim, I've got to ask you a question. Talk to me about your preparation for telling your wife, hey, so I'm going to get on an airplane and go speak live. How did that whole thing go down?
Well, it was an interesting conversation, being spouses and sharing the living space. But not only that, my wife is an RN, and she works on the COVID unit in our local hospital.
Wow.
So we had big in-depth discussions about how her work and my work intersect. And she was sort of my protection advisor, if you will, to go on the road. So as always, it was a team effort. But she knows it's part of what we all need to do is to slowly get back to what we're doing. And so she was supportive.
That's good.
Awesome. So I'm going to set up the context a little bit for our listeners, and then we'll kind of jump into it. So Jim had an event. It was an internal company event. So it was just for internal people only. It was in the state of Arizona, and they were at about 10% capacity of the room. Is that correct, Jim?
Correct.
And and so this was booked kind of pre-pandemic, and they brought it back in, and so they rescheduled it, and it went. So Jim, I guess my first question, kind of piggybacking a little bit on the conversation you had with your wife, when or what did you feel like was the place when you said, hey, I feel like it is safe for me to travel to and be in a live event? Where was kind of that place for you, or what was kind of that boundary that you crossed?
Yeah, I think it really came down to doing a little bit of homework, right? Studying everything that was available from CDC and state health boards, looking at the numbers and everything, and seeing how collectively we were doing pretty good this summer. And so, we're starting to get a handle on it. We're getting experience. And so it wasn't the first week of March when everybody knew absolutely nothing. We're 5 months into it. So we can do this wise. We can manage this risk with some knowledge and some science and some intentional behaviors. And so I talked about those with my wife and with you, and a lot with the client. Hopefully we'll talk about that, to say, how can we do this as safe as possible and protect each other? Me protect the client, them protect me, of course, protecting our audience. So it was done intentionally and carefully and based on science and behaviors. And once we thought we had a good plan, we proceeded ahead.
That's so good.
Really great.
Yeah. Did your wife have any input as far as, the certain things, because being a nurse, obviously, and working in the COVID unit? Did she have, okay, Jim, this is what you need to take with you. This is the things that you need to be aware of. And these are the things that you need to prepare for. And what were those things?
Yeah, she didn't have any secret stuff like that they're doing at the hospital that you and I know about.
Yeah.
We all watch the news and we know about, mask and gloves and social distancing. So we kind of reviewed those though a little bit. And she helped me work out a plan for going on the road. Like I basically made a little kit of my PPE equipment, my mask, my gloves, my gel, and I made one of those for every one of my bags. My flight bag, my prop bag, and my backpack slash suitcase, briefcase, so that no matter where I was, I had access to all of it. And I carried an extra set for the person who might be sitting next to me on the plane. If they dropped their mask or broke it, I had one to give it to them to protect them.
Oh, that's so great.
So smart. Just like an adventure.
Yeah. Gotta be prepared.
You'd loan me your pen if I needed it, right? You know, that kind of thing, right? We help each other out on the road. So, so I just brought a kit for me and my seatmate, if you will, everywhere I went, and all my bags, so I had it handy. So there were no miraculous tricks. It was just like, let's think this through carefully. Yeah. And what are we going to do when something happens? If someone loses a mask, whatever. So planning for those contingencies.
Yeah.
So
well, and that had to be really hard too, because again, this is your first time doing this. Mm-hmm. And so you don't know all the contingencies, correct? And correct. So I want to get back to that in a second, but I really want to focus in on, and Jennifer, you know, this is something you and I talked about before this, you know, so the pre-event call is something that's very important in our industry, just overall. It's really the first time for this, not the first time, but the speaker and the client really kind of gets in and says, hey, here's what we want to accomplish. Here are the goals. And typically it's around content and customization and audience. But this took on a wholly different thing. It's, hey, how are we going to keep each other safe? So, you know, talk to us about, you know, that pre-event phone call with the client and kind of your thoughts going into it and the substance of that conversation.
Yeah, it took over the first half hour of the call. And I think the key components were that we were both very open-minded, and it was a dialogue. It was like, hey, what are you doing on your end to keep your people safe? And how can I work with you and help you? And that went back and forth for well over half an hour. Mm-hmm. And we basically kind of were both very open about the way we're living our lives. I was like, you know, I'm a climber, and I used to be a geologist dealing with contaminated situations. And my wife's a nurse. So this is how we're living on this end. And I want to be extra careful when I come to you. What are you doing? We were both very open about that. The lady on the phone told me how they were operating their business and the procedures they were using. And then we slowly started integrating and said, okay, that makes sense to me. But when I come to the door, why don't I just meet you outside and I'll follow you in? And that, I mean, we literally choreographed our meeting in the parking lot, our taking of the stage, our AV check. And we did that in a constant back and forth check. You know, I was like, hey, can I have a request? Don't have the person who introduces me stay on the stage, because we might shake hands out of habit, or we might be too close. I said, have them wave to me and I will walk up when they walk away. So we choreographed my walk onto the stage to protect each other.
So that's interesting, because when I deal with my backgrounds in entertainment, and so we always talk about, you know, people take care of, you know, the actual event or the keynote or the routine, but people forget about entrances and exits all the time. Mm-hmm. And so that's an interesting point. And I love that you brought that up, because I think it's something that people need to really pay attention to, because like you said, people are going to either, you know, high five or shake hands or do something so automatically. And of course, we're not around people, so we're actually craving that even more so. So it's an interesting point. So on that, I'm going to tag on to that point you just made. How is the AV team preparing the microphones and making sure that things
Good question. Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I mean, they wore masks, I wore masks, we kept social distance, but there were times, you know, I put my microphone on, but they had adjusted, and the young man came very close to me. We both had masks, and I did what I do when I'm out trail running. You know, you kind of don't breathe on the other person. He breathes and I breathe this way. Sounds crazy, but again, just a micro step to help protect each other. I handed him my laptop, and I gave him instructions from 6 feet away how to connect it. So, you know, there was a little bit of dancing around each other, but all for a good reason. To try and get things going. And, you know, were we 100% perfect? Probably not. Could I have done some things better? Probably. But gosh darn it, we were, you know, 90% really effective, or 95, I don't know. But just constantly trying to think about, I protect you, you protect me. So rather than me handing him the laptop, I put it on the counter, and then I moved away. Just lots of micro steps to keep the risk just a little.
So I want to tag on to that a little bit, but I want to make a point to people who are watching or listening, is that if somebody really does like using a handheld, I would suggest always using a lavalier microphone and or the microphone that's on the lectern, on the podium. So no matter what, seeing if you can always use a lavalier that's always going to, or, you know, a lapel mic that's always going to be far away from your mouth, because oftentimes people will, you know, I mean, not only are they handling the same microphone, but they're, you know, having that up close to their mouth. And so, as you know, even on a good day when there is no virus, it's not always a good thing to do, because you never know who's had that before. And the AV guys guy's usually really great and they have certain alcohol things, but you know what?
Yeah.
Better safe than sorry. Use a lavalier microphone, then you have your hands free, and then it's easy for you to talk, present, or move forward. So we talked about some of the things that, maybe we could have done better. So, I mean, I know that, when people have been holding events for, years, 50 years, 70 years. And so now people are doing events in a whole different way. So they're not used to all those certain steps and protocols. What are some of the things that maybe you and the company missed that you go, next time I really want to make a note of this and make sure that we don't miss this?
Yeah, they did great, and I'd like to think that I did well for sure, and we're all learning. So the biggest thing was open communication. It was just like, they'd go, hey, give me your laptop. I go, would you like me to hand it to you, or would you like me to?
That's good. That's
Great.
good.
Yeah,
right?
So good.
Because I don't know whether he has the better idea or I did, so let's just talk about it. And if he said, why don't you put it here, and then I'll plug it in, I say, hey, that's a great idea. We're all figuring it out together. So just really open communications, and really open habits. Someone would come up to say hello. They're all excited. They'd say, hold on a second. Let me put my mask back on. If I was over in the corner, I'd put my mask on, and then I'd say, great to see you. That kind of stuff. So just constantly reminding each other that we're trying to do the best we can, and let's talk this through and think this through together. One of the biggest problems, I thought travel was pretty good. The stewardesses and the stewards on the plane, they did a great job of being assertive but very polite about reminding everyone to not only wear a mask but to cover their nose. And the plane went pretty well, but baggage claim didn't go quite so well. Now I don't control it, you don't, the client doesn't. But what happened was in baggage claim, they had little spots, and I stood on my orange spot, and the people next to me stood on their orange spot 6 feet away. But somebody saw their bag and got excited out of 50 years of flying habit, just walked between us and grabbed their bag, turned around, and they were within.
Just didn't even think about it.
Of course.
I think that, and that's going to happen a lot too, is people just don't even think about it. They get distracted by something else and they just go. But I think to Jennifer's point, it's I think it's two things. I think number one, it's people showing each other grace of just, hey, this is kind of new for us, and we're going to make a good faith effort to work towards this better, but there can be some mix-ups. There's going to be some things we could have done better. I use a sports analogy too. Major League Baseball started back, and they had a few hiccups kind of at the beginning of the season, but they've consistently got better. They're not perfect, but they've gotten better. And I think too, it's a little bit of a learning curve for us all of how can we get better at doing it.
Absolutely. And it's just a polite and gentle reminders. I love your word grace. Like if you and I are both going towards the door, I can stop and just give you a little hand gesture, and you go first. You give me a hand wave. We don't need to converse. We don't need to go within 6 feet of each other. Just a little bit of grace for each other, because we're all trying to do the best we can in a new environment and a changing new environment all the time.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. I got to ask you a question. So Jim, being the gear freak that you are with all the different kind of gears you have, what kind of mask did you wear? I'm so curious what into that thought process.
Yeah, well, I had my COVID nursing consultant with me picking out masks. We talked about the level of mask and the right type of one. I actually decided there were masks for different purposes. For flying for one, and going on stage was a different one. I may have gone too far. At one point, I was actually thinking about dressing up like this. That's actually me on Everest at about 25,000 feet. I thought it was really safe, but my wife said it was too much.
Oh gosh.
So funny. Oh my gosh.
So I wore, obviously protective, high quality mask, that kind of stuff for the travel. And I changed it often. I threw them out often. And also I wore a different mask. This was a personal decision. I decided to wear a mask when I walked onto the stage. Now there was nobody near me. I was on a giant stage. We left the first 5 rows empty. There was no one within 40 feet of me, but I wore it out just to kind of show two things. One, I'm trying to do what I can, to protect them, and it's a sort of a professional behavior I would put forth. But also, I just wanted to show that, hey, I was really careful, hopefully in my life and on my way down here, including up to the minute I walked on the stage. So I decided to wear a mask on stage, and I've even done that with a few virtual keynotes that we've done, Stephen, as well. Is just even when I walk on stage, just take it off and say, this is now, and this is what we as professionals are doing to protect those around us. So
that's awesome. So you lead by example, taking the mask on stage, letting people know that you're aware. And, it's like the elephant in the room, having that, and then you just simply take it off when you're ready to speak.
Right.
Right. So good. And I want to note too, tell everybody how many people were there and how they had it set up. I mean, I think that's pretty pretty outstanding. Here in Las Vegas, in Nevada, we're 50 people and under still, but it's not that way in every single state around the country. And so how many people were there at the event and how they have it set up?
Yeah, the number of people at the event was 350, which is a big number these days.
Yeah.
It was allowed in that state. We checked the rules beforehand, and they were in a good position on their COVID numbers, if you will. But the key thing
they
was,
wouldn't have allowed it. Trust me. Trust me. We've had the governor come down on some events here in Las Vegas and literally, I mean, immediately have the police take people out. So yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. The key thing was the number of people was 350 or so, but the room held 3,300. And so I think Stephen said up front that 10% capacity in the room. So there was plenty of space. We just blocked off the first 5 rows and it was a big stage. Now they owned the building, so they could rent a room or use a room for 3,500 people. Then they put 3,300 in it, so 9-10% population in there. So that was one factor that they had. But of course, they controlled the flow of the people in the room. I was in the green room. I walked on stage. So again, we choreographed all that stuff through two-way conversation, and we were able to have a lot of space. So.
And how did it feel? How did it feel with 350 people in that room?
Yeah, exciting, absolutely. It was a little bit different feel. As a speaker, we like not only a big crowd, but hopefully everyone together dense, because it has a positive human energy. People laugh together, people express their feelings together. So it was different from the stage side, seeing everybody spread out. And I imagine in the audience, it felt a little different too, because if you went to an event in the old days and it was only 10% full, you'd go, wow, this is not very well attended.
Right. Did I do something wrong?
Yeah.
There was something wrong then. There's something good now, right? So I'm sure it felt a little different to me and probably to them, but we were just so excited to be together, and the energy. I mean, everybody was so thankful for everything. I mean, I got to tell you, when I drove to the airport for my flight, just driving alone down to the airport for an hour and a half, I was like a 16-year-old who just got their license this afternoon.
Awesome.
My windows were open in the car. I had the music blaring. I was like, woohoo, I'm a free man. And getting on the plane, I felt like a 6-year-old who was getting on their very first plane flight. I was looking out the window and watching the stewardesses and everything, the stewards. So it was very exciting to be out there, but there was an air of, we have to do this right. Let's pay attention. Let's watch our neighbors. Let's back up and let that person go first. So it had a little bit more of a serious note, but it was manageable.
So good.
That's
so
cool.
good.
Hey, Jim, I want to chat a little bit about your content. Obviously, you customize every talk, but, coming out of a pandemic, not coming out of a pandemic, but coming out of just the past 5-6 months, how has that changed, and how is your message different to this client because of where we are and what we've gone through?
Yeah, great question. I spent a lot of time thinking about that before I did this presentation, because I realized it's not life and work and school as normal. Everything's changed for all of us, and we're all under a lot of pressure. It's been wearisome. It's been going on for many months. So I thought about it a lot, and one of the rules we have as professional speakers is, if there's a pink elephant in the room, you better talk about it, because ignoring it can mean that some people think you don't see the pink elephant, or you're choosing to ignore the pink elephant. And if we can all see the pink elephant, you got to talk about it. So I changed my opening just to kind of go right to, the COVID hit, and everything feels different now. Home life and work life, shopping and going for a walk, they all feel a little weird now. So I just kind of put it out there as fellow humans, everything's changed. And then I kind of steered it over to where I was going to talk about that day. And I'm a mountain climber, and I talk about resilience. And beneath that, I talk about dealing with change, challenge, and uncertainty. And of course, this pandemic and the phase we're in now has got plenty of all of those. So I just kind of let people know that we're going to talk about change, challenge, and uncertainty. And I'm going to pull things out of my climbing experience that relate back to the challenges we're all in. So, it was important to frame it up front, to recognize in the middle. I used a few examples that we're all encountering at the grocery store and at work. And then same thing on the back end a little bit, circling back to where are they now, both in their personal life and in their work life.
So timely, Jim. That's incredible. And I can't think of a better person to come and speak to those people, and anyone right now, than you, especially who you are, what you've experienced, and what you can bring to the table in today's world. And it's not that company or that association that needs it. It's everyone. It's everyone needing these skills, right? Because, when do we have to really dig deep and have this resilience and these tools in our tool belt to be able to pull out, because we're not used to it. We've never experienced this before. This is completely brand new. However, somebody like you who's experienced life and death situations or things that could lead to a life and death situation, you have to be, completely focused and dig deep into yourself and really pull out these tools and be able to use these, not only use them, but use them well. And so get good at them. And so we need to find that. So tell me a little bit about that. So when you are, when you talk to this group specifically, because I know you're also doing virtual events as well, what are you finding that people really need to know? Are companies asking you for specifics, and then are they saying, Jim, tell us how to do this? How do we accomplish this during this time? What are you finding?
Yeah, very insightful question. We have been doing some virtual presentations as well with Fortune 500 companies. And lots of times in the old days, we would talk about elevating the business goals or, the teamwork and everything. And that's absolutely still part of it. But to their credit, all the executives I've talked to so far were like, look, we know it's tough on people right now. Some people are engaged with the challenge and other people are overwhelmed by it. We just want to lift them up. We want to get them a little bit of reassurance, a little bit of uplift. And we're all struggling. Sometimes today, I'm struggling more than you. And then tomorrow you might be having a tough day and I'm okay. So what can you bring to those people to lift them up? So when I talked with them, I talked about personal resilience, which is how am I going to deal with this challenge right now? But also resilient teamwork and resilient leadership. And I just shared some examples that I've been on through various expeditions as a team leader and being on Everest during a massive earthquake. And that was a big tragedy for the whole community. So I kind of broke it out in those segments of personal resilience, teamwork, and leadership, but always recognizing that, when we're under personal stress, and everybody around us is too, nobody is Superman or Superwoman. We get tired. We need to lift each other up. But if I'm having a good day and Steven says, boy, I don't know if I can get that done tomorrow, I need to help out Steven today. I need to search for Steven. You know what? I've got time. I can get that done, buddy. And then next week, I'm going to be having a bad day. I might be convinced that, my business is gone forever or my kids are never going to go to school again. And then maybe Jennifer will lift me up. So it is a process of trying to focus on our task, lifting others up, and also sometimes yielding the lead a little bit, like in climbing with the person that goes first is leading. And sometimes if I'm tired, the best thing I can do to help our team would be to tell you the truth. I'm too tired to lead today, Steven. Why don't you take the lead or somebody else? I just need to rest for a little bit. It's okay. Yeah. And if I really care about your safety and our success, I'll admit that tiredness and let someone else lead for a while.
Holy moly. I think that's so powerful, especially, leaders. People in leadership positions always feel like they have to have all the answers. They have to always be there, show up, and be that driving force. And so, just tagging on to what you said, how can leaders do that? I think, because I was gonna ask you, what's the most important thing a leader can do? And I think that's one of the most important things. How do you lead in today's world? You've led in some very precarious positions. How do leaders lead today?
Yeah, there's a couple of steps, but I think one of the most important ones is to be realistic, but optimistic. Not just one or the other. Optimistic might be, don't worry, there's no problem in our economy or our health or social, everything's fine. Well, that makes me sound like I'm disconnected and not even well-grounded right now because things have changed. Things are difficult. So I need to be realistic that it is a challenge right now, but if we're talking, as professionals, we can plan an event and do it safely, and that's realistic but optimistic. I think that's an important thing because people that are being led, they want to know that the leader sees what's happening, maybe has some suggestions, but we know that nobody has all the answers right now, so we're figuring it out together. So to be realistic and optimistic means to recognize the problem, to say, you know what, we've got some really smart people on this team and some real experience in this events industry. We can solve this problem, and that projects to the audience and to the team as well.
I love that.
Jim, I want to ask you about something really quick. So knowing your story, there are a lot of kind of similarities between what we're going through now and kind of what Nepal went through after the earthquake. 2015, the 7.8 earthquake, and how they rebuilt and how they had to rebuild and kind of what they went through. Talk to us about that, just some similarities you see, but also too, just some of the strategies that you saw the Nepalese people use to get them through that.
Great
and
question.
kind of the aftermath of it as well too.
Really great.
So I was in Nepal climbing Mount Everest with my team in 2015. Massive earthquake hit Nepal. Biggest earthquake in 81 years, 7.8 magnitude. And it instantly changed everything. We spent decades getting ready to climb, a year of training, and in an instant, our climb was over. Climbing wasn't important. We need to try and survive ourselves, help our neighbors and the other expeditions survive, get to the base of the mountain and help our Everest community. And then as we worked our way back towards the city, Nepal. So it was just this constant set of changes. Everything was different. People were at various levels of trauma. People were at various levels of problems and upsets in their life, in their business. And so it kind of came back down to well, a little bit we talked about before, which is talking openly. How can I help you? How can you help me? Taking turns, lifting up each other when we can. And as things calm down, starting to lift our heads a little bit and saying, okay, everyone on our team's okay. How about our neighboring team? Oh, everyone's in base camp is all right now after 4 days of disaster and epic situations. What about that community down the valley? We should send some people down there and see if they need some muscle to move rocks or find water, whatever's necessary. Yeah. So it's as you're more stable and can help more, you chip in. And what happens is that kind of putting out that energy, you spark resilience in others. And they say, hey, one guy is moving rocks. I can stop for an hour and help him move some rocks. Now you've got 2 people. 4 more ladies join. Now we have 6 people moving rocks. And so we start to spark resilience in others, and that sparks resilience back to ourselves. So it becomes a positive feedback loop.
So good.
And so that at small scales right after the disaster, and as we spent weeks in Nepal, large scales, and even years later on fundraising and business regrowth in Nepal, is just to sort of slowly lift each other up a little bit at a time. And I saw a piece of graffiti on the wall that I later became sort of a bumper sticker. Nepal said, "We will rise again." Wow. They didn't say it was going to be fast nor easy, but they said, "We will rise again." And I think that's true for our economy and our families right now too.
Yeah. Jim, so we're kind of running up against the end of our time, but I want to get to something pretty exciting you've been working on in your life, which is your next book. I know it's due out in May of 2021, and the title of it is The Next Everest, and it is about your Everest expeditions. Give us a quick snapshot of it, if you don't mind. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, it's called The Next Everest, coming out actually April 20th next year, 2021.
April 20th, sorry, my fault.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Yeah, so really what it is, it shares the earthquake story in depth, some of the things we touched upon today, and some of the resilience lessons I've teased out, both from the being in the earthquake, surviving the earthquake, and then having to go back to Everest, and not having, but choosing to go back to Everest to help support Nepal 2 years later, and going back and successfully climbing the mountain. And also about what kind of lessons we can learn from when things do go wrong, when something traumatic does happen, in this case, an earthquake, but for us right now, pandemic and other traumatic challenges.
Awesome.
That's so good.
The bottom line on that is when something goes awry, whether it's an earthquake or a personal tragedy of losing someone or your spouse is sick, that trauma happens and you can't necessarily make that trauma go away. And post-traumatic stress is a real disorder, it is a real thing, but something can go along with that, which is post-traumatic growth, PTG. And what it says is that doesn't make the trauma go away, and it's not easy to work your way out, but over time you can take that mess and distill some meaning from it, some strength, some resilience, and you take that with you to the next set of challenges, to the next set of opportunities. You're a little bit wiser, a little bit more experienced, and you can help others who are struggling with their difficult situation. So post-traumatic growth sort of slowly bumps us up into a higher level of capacity, even though the event and the immediate aftermath are not very pleasant as an individual or a society, but we can slowly improve ourselves over time and do better with even bigger and bigger challenges. So I talk about that some in the book as well as the speaking.
Love it. And they can take a look at it on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, it's out there at Amazon and all your regular booksellers for next April, coming out again the next Everest. So.
Stephen, can I ask one last quick closing question of Jim?
Jennifer.
Do you mind? Awesome, because you know I'm the question asker, and I
love
really love
ahead.
Good content and really great tools. So Jim, with all of your experience, you know, and I know that one of the things that people are struggling with is that, like I said, in the beginning, it was, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, then it was a month, then it was 3 months. And here we are almost 6 months later. Oftentimes people can get through anything if they know there's an endpoint, but when there isn't an endpoint and they don't have a date of, I know I can get through it until then, what do people do? How do you handle this time when you have no idea when this is ending or what it's going to look like when it does?
Yeah, it's a good question. It really gets into the deep things about what motivates people. Like you say, if it's just 1 week of difficulty or next Thursday, whatever, we can kind of frame that and push through to them. But when it keeps going and going and going, it wears us down. And we have to recognize that we are going to have some down times. And that's why we try and lift each other up and take turns leading. But I think it really gets a little deeper than that. When we get in a tough situation, whether it's being in an earthquake or a pandemic, or maybe your child has a permanent disability that you need to deal with. The big thing is it's difficult as heck, it's tiring, but we're not gonna walk away. you're not going to walk away from rebuilding your country or taking care of your child or being a professional and contributing an income to your family and a service to your community. So in spite of the difficulties, we are going to hang in there and we are going to find a way through this. I don't know whether that's days, weeks, months, or years, but it's that deep level of commitment that this is who I am and this is what I do. And we're signed up for better or worse. It's like a marriage, right? For better or worse, for rich or poor, you stay together and we're going to get through this thing. So you have to look really deep inside and realize that as a parent, as a community member, as a member of a country or member of an industry, this is tough, but we're going to figure this out. It may be really different. It may be longer than we think. I don't know the date, and you may not know the date either, but we're going to hang in there and we are going to see this through and we will rise again.
Oh, so good. I knew you would end it like that. Thank you so much.
No, that's a really good ender. Jim, thanks so much for the time and being with us and just sharing your experience. I know it's going to be helpful to a lot of people as they think through the next 6 months and what it may look like. And we don't know what it's going to look like, but we can figure it out. So anyways, Jim, thank you so much. For those of you out there wanting more information on Jim, go to our website, www.executivespeakers.com, search Jim Davidson. You can get speech topics, video, and as well as testimonials. You can also go to his website, speakingofadventure.com, or go on Amazon, take a look at his new book. So Jim, thank you so much for your time. And as always, Jennifer, thank you so much for being such a wonderful co-host. We appreciate it. And we will look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Thank you so much.
So good. Bye, guys.